Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, and welcome to another special guest episode. I am thrilled today to be talking with Dr. Michelle Flemmings. She's got such an amazing bio. I'm going to let her introduce herself so I don't get anything wrong. But Dr. Flemmings, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me, Megan.
Go ahead and launch in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career and, kind of what you're up to.
Certainly. And it's interesting that you said that my bio is amazing and deep. I look at it and I think, oh my goodness, I took the hard way around a lot of times to get to this spot in my life.
You're so judgmental, right?
We are. It's that perfectionism. So the story starts probably back when I finished med school, 1980, I forget which. And I originally went into internal medicine, thought I wanted to be a surgeon, stood in the OR a couple of times and was like, no, not for me. So did internal medicine with the idea that I'd go into ICU and critical care. And somewhere about my third year, I ended up thinking, I really like being in the office more and talking with the patients. So I went into an office practice before hospitalists existed. And I was the one back in the day who was decreasing the length of stay. In the old days, heart attacks would stay in the hospital. Minimum guideline was 10 days. Same for pneumonia. Women would stay in the hospital for at least a week after they had their baby. And that was untenable. It was not sustainable. So I ended up being the hospitalist. And at times I would go also and help out in the ICU and be that intensivist. And I stepped back from that while I was in my mid-20s living in New York, enjoying La Vida of disco and, going to Studio 54 and such, and said, maybe I need to start paying off my student loan, pay off my needing to have good, pretty shoes and clothes to go out clubbing habit and going to concerts. That was always fun. And I started working in the ER. And that was when it hit me. Wow, I cannot have a beeper. I can still see patients. I can see instant results. The paperwork is almost nil. And when my shift is done, my shift is done.
Walk out.
Exactly. Mic drop moment. So I went back and I did a second residency. And that was the craziest, I think, and the hardest thing, but the most important thing. Because from there, it opened up a lot of opportunities for leadership at the county level, at the state level, and at the national level. So that was, although difficult, it was the life-changing portion of the bio. And where I sit now is I am now non-clinical after 35 or 36 years in the ER. And I work for a healthcare tech company as the physician strategist on cloud infrastructure. So it's fun. And I still do call my patients. It's my clients, and I'm working with you to support our patients because they always will be. Yeah. And that advocate and that voice for making certain the technology works for, yes, the organization, absolutely the person at the bedside who's taking care of the patients and the patients themselves. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. That's so funny. I'm just sitting here as a primary care person. I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for the ER physicians. I'm grateful for the hospitalists, but also grateful in a completely different way for physicians who are advocating for the tech to work for us, not against us, right? Because we need so much more of that. And before we had started talking, right, you were mentioning how rare that is to have a physician in those roles and in those spaces. And it's like, why is that rare when we are the users? Like, our patients are not the end users of the technology, right? We are. And, we could talk on a different podcast for hours, right, about all the challenges of all the tech.
Yeah. And you make a great point there, because CPOE, the computer physician order entry, happened to us. Much like
Mhm.
back in the day, DRGs and RVUs and all of that happened to us.
Right.
And in
Right.
my
Those things
opinion,
are not always there. Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
face down doing patient care, and the associations that were hopefully putting forward our vision and our choice and our voice and standing up for us, I think blinked one too many times. So now we're at the point where they finally realize that to get the buy-in because of COVID and
Mhm.
physicians now having a higher level of status and say and decision making in hospitals, we have to have clinicians at the table on the tech side. Have to.
I appreciate hearing that perspective because I would say that probably most of us don't feel like our status has increased. And so you have a different view of things. So that's good to know that
Mhm.
that may be going on. But let's pivot the conversation just a little bit. And we always talk on here about our stories of burnout and challenge and overwhelm. And many of us who are still practicing clinical medicine expect that those folks who have stepped out into a more non-clinical realm are going to be burnout free, right? They're going to be resilient and magically just better because they're no longer slogging through patient care. Um, but share a little bit about your story.
Magnificent point. And I'm here to tell you that the characters and the names may change, the location may change, but the situation is exactly the same. Some of it is because of the way that the systems work. I've gone from being in a healthcare organization to a large healthcare technology organization, and there's still a lot of work, a lot of tasks, a lot of things that get delegated to me, some inappropriately, and I do push those back. But I think I think where my resilience comes from is I do not work night shift anymore. I
Hmm.
did that for a lot of years, and that I didn't realize what a physiological toll that was taking on me. Although I love the freedom of working with my nurses on night and figuring it
Hmm.
out as we went, MacGyvering it, and then handing off in victory that we survived. Um, that glorious walk out into the sunrise out of the
Yeah.
ambulance bay. But in coming into the corporate side, what's been interesting is the fight to achieve relevance and get traction and get buy-in from those who are supposed to be seeking me out as a resource. The
Hmm.
way we've always done it are famous words, even in the tech and vendor space. And that fight of, I'm here to help, and having them go, we don't need you. You're just a doc. You don't know about the tech. You don't know what a Kubernetes is, and you don't understand business. And it's like, okay, let me into one meeting and let me show you. So
Hmm.
it has taken that proving them wrong thing, which I love to do, showing them that I do have a space and a unique set of skills, Liam Neeson, that they don't have, because I can fluently speak to providers and to hospital organizations. And where the elevation and status of the physician comes from that I don't think you guys get to see is that because of staffing shortages,
Hmm.
hospital administrations are less likely to make decisions that affect providers without
Hmm.
involving them, because they
Hmm.
know that in 30 minutes you can find another job down the street.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's not it's larger at some of the smaller organizations where they can't necessarily attract as well,
Hmm.
but it is definitely a theme. They want to have their CMO involved or their CMIO involved or their chief nursing officer. Somebody clinical has to put a stamp of approval
Hmm.
before the dollars go out the door to pay for anything.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, I think, because, again, somebody stepping from a clinical to a non-clinical role also probably at the beginning, this may or may not be part of your experience, may struggle to feel like they do have skills that are outside of just being a doctor, right? Because we tend to absolutely minimize those. And although, yes, our clinical skills, right, diagnosis and treatment plans and, juggling all of these things, we tend not to translate those at all into other spaces, into business spaces or thinking, well, I'm just a doctor. I can't do anything more. Talk a little bit about that evolution for yourself and sort of how you were able to go into those conversations and say, no, you do need me here and let me show you what I've got?
Mhm. That's also a great question. I swear you're full of them today. But wow, brilliant question. What it is yes, it is a fear of not knowing.
Mhm.
It's an uncertainty of, do I belong? Am I fooling myself? That imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
very, very close to the surface. Being afraid to fail, especially in a bigger stage and where there's money on the line,
Mhm.
or where you're being presented to a hospital organization and they're talking about concepts that are a little outside of your comfort zone. So it's taken, yes, stretching, but also then falling back a little bit into what I do know. And I do
Mhm.
know how hospitals work. It's uniquely equipping
Yeah.
me for this is my ED work. We
Yeah.
have to be able to work from end to end in that hospital to get
Mhm.
whatever it is done for our patients, from the lab to scheduling to ambulatory to radiology to being able to get into the supply chain at night when nobody has the keys and the Pyxis, and knowing where that little whatever it is doohickey is that you need for this patient now, as opposed to having him sit until morning or, God forbid, get admitted for a procedure that you could have done the night before.
Yeah.
So that I can do it and I can figure this out has been a lot of what has helped me on the way. um, Dr. Una, my favorite mentor, says you can do hard things. I mean, I have done thoracotomies, I have
Yeah.
intubated people, I have done tracheostomies, I've delivered babies. Not that it's my field of expertise,
Right.
but
Sometimes they're coming out in the ED and that's just what's going
yeah,
on.
oh yeah, but holding on to that and using that as a source of strength, and
Mhm.
then really settling yourself and saying, I belong here.
Yeah.
You are going to do healthcare, you're not going to do it without me. You have to include me in the process. And saying that and believing that and emulating that in everything that I do has been key. It's also, though, been setting boundaries and
Mm.
showing people and explaining to people and training people about how they are going to treat me and how they are going to utilize me, and that my time is valuable. I'm
Mhm.
not just here to be, a shiny ornament that you dangle in front of a client. So they go, oh, we want to talk to her. And then you push me out of the way. No such thing.
Yeah. Well, and tell us how, kind of how you learn to develop those boundaries, because of course that's such an interesting area for so many people who struggle feeling like they can't have boundaries. And some of it is they've encountered pushback. Some of it is they're just so acculturated to thinking that they can't say no, they can't set limits. Um, because of course our employed positions and in our training, right, really sets us up for that. So talk to us a little bit about sort of how you learn to put those boundaries into place and the maintenance of them.
Trial and error, my friend. Trial and error. And looking back over my history, some of that convoluted path is the manifestation of people pleasing and
Hmm.
misplaced trust. So staying too long in a location because maybe someone was going to be inconvenienced, or I was going to be leaving this one holding the bag, or I thought they needed me because of whatever initiative. And then realizing what was actually happening is that I was being relegated to the other side of the table, or maybe outside of the room, being spoken over. Ideas of mine, I floated out there, nothing happens.
Hmm.
A week later, somebody else pushes out the same idea, and oh, it's marvelous. Let's put all this money behind it and let's do it. And I'm thinking, what is the difference here?
Yeah.
So getting frustrated, being angry, honestly, at first with myself because I didn't recognize this pattern, and then putting together a plan and executing on it with specific milestones and goals of how I'm going to prevent this from ever happening again. And first, it started with me. How
Hmm.
am I going to improve me and how I feel about myself, the work product that I can put out there, what I can bring to the table, what is my value, what is my worth? Believing in that, being able to not just tell it to others, but tell it
Hmm.
to myself and have
Hmm.
myself understand and say, yeah, you're right, and go forward. That was huge.
Yeah.
After that, saying no to even some great offers. I got offered a directorship at an ED where I used to work.
Mhm.
And it was after I had gotten trained and board certified in EM. And I looked at the director in the face and I said, 5 years ago, I would have jumped at this, but now I'm smarter. I'm more well trained. I have much more confidence in my abilities. And I don't think that you can afford my price. I know what I'm worth now. And it was one of the best things I ever did. Best things I ever did.
I
And
love
so,
that. I just
yeah.
want to highlight that for people who are listening because that version of you 5 years before, would have been so happy, would have been so impressed and really felt like they arrived. But you notice that the person that you were now, that you were, at that moment, right, when you were being offered that, didn't want that, wanted something more than that.
Mhm.
Because so often I see people, they're still hung up on what they wanted 5 years ago, even though a part of them knows that's not what I want now.
You're absolutely right. And being truthful to yourself and understanding that and acting on that is
Mhm.
huge.
Yeah.
I think that it's a hard thing. Women are taught from a very young age that little girls are seen and not heard, that it's
Mhm.
not polite to stand out or yell or be overly enthusiastic, to want things that are more, to want to be paid more, to want to be bigger, to want to be on a stage. All
Yeah.
of those things are not ladylike. And I came up from Jamaican and Costa Rican parents. And so we're talking the old British system where there's decorum and yes, ma'am, no, sir. There are a lot of rules and a lot of guidelines. Stepping out of that, you have to have a sense of self and you have to embrace that ambition
Mhm.
and be okay with people looking at you and going, what's wrong with her? What is she up to? But also being bold enough to say that there could be consequences that I don't want, that potentially someone's going to label me as being difficult or overly ambitious or, um, God forbid, bitchy, but it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
And being okay with that because it is some of the fight that you have to fight to get to the other side.
Yeah. I'm
So,
so glad you mentioned that because I think we often, again, in sort of our perfectionist black and white thinking, we might think, well, if I put myself out there, I certainly have to be perfect at doing it, right? Which leads us to procrastinate on making those choices. But it's also this sense of, and I hope no one says anything bad about me, not recognize we don't control that part of it, right? And it's going to happen because people are people and they talk loudly and they share their opinions quite freely, right? But being willing to say, I know that's going to happen and that's okay. Like I'll handle it. It's okay to be called bitchy. It's okay to be called, well, it's not okay, but it is what it is. And I don't have to be stopped by it.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I grew up in the days of black and white TV.
Hmm.
So now being in this always on, completely visible, look at me influencer technology that we have with the internet, it's hard not to think about what others will think. But if you mire yourself and if you put guardrails around and braces on your capabilities based on what others will think, because they're going to think no matter what, then you never move forward. You never do anything for yourself. You're living a life that they have chosen for you. And when you get to that end of life, you've got no one to blame but yourself. I mean, you can point at those mysterious others, but in truth, you have no one to blame but yourself for having missed out on all of those experiences,
Yeah.
all of those things you could have done, all of those places you could have been, the people you could have influenced, the perspectives you could have shared that might have moved the needle and changed somebody else's decision that led them to live a better life or a longer, healthier life. Or maybe a young lady who decides, wow, she's doing it. I can be courageous enough and do it as well.
Hmm.
That borrowing of authority, that borrowing of the confidence is something that I think that we don't do enough.
Yeah.
from some of our mentors and some of the folks that we do look at with regard, both in our organizations, but in society at large. We can borrow that confidence, be bold, and move forward. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Explain a little bit the process as you see it of borrowing the confidence, because I don't think we've talked about that, but I like that idea of it's a little bit fake it until you make it, but probably a little deeper than that. So what would you say to someone who's out there thinking, borrow confidence? How what on earth would I do?
Wow. So it's for me, it was my mom. My mom was a junior high school teacher. And what I loved about her was her ability just to say, I don't know everything. Oh
Mm,
boy, I was wrong. That didn't go as planned, and laugh at herself. She didn't take it so seriously that every time something untoward happened or something unexpected happened, that it was her personal failure. She's like, oh, well, I learned
sure.
from that.
Yeah.
So, with that example, and then looking at others who are just amazingly confident, I mean, Barbara Jordan was one of the ones I remember writing a book report about. I admired her as a child. Nikki Giovanni, exquisitely well spoken and outspoken about social wrongs. Same Angela Davis. And yes, almost all of them were women of color.
Yeah.
But also looking at some of the others who, decided, well, what the hell? I'll get in a spaceship.
Yeah.
I'll go up there. I'll be an example for the others, even if it does mean that I potentially lose my life.
Mhm.
Standing up when there are wrongs, Malala,
Yeah.
all of these folks.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of examples that you can look at and say, okay, how can I capture that creativity, innovation, free thinking, free will, free speech, sense of self, sense of pride, sense of the self confidence, et cetera? How can I capture that and recreate that in my life in a
Yeah.
way that, yes, I'm comfortably uncomfortable with? So
Mhm.
just getting to the edge of that comfort zone and then taking that next step to say, wow, I survived. Let me do something more. And
Yeah.
going from there. Mine, honestly, when I look back, it's my mom.
Yeah. And I love that. And just thinking very broadly about examples, we might imagine these people are innately confident in everything that they've done, right? That that their self-worth and their belief is 100%. And of course, I can't imagine that's true, right? I can't imagine that as the first astronauts were strapping themselves into these rockets, right? That they were fear-free and just, okay, no problem, no problem. There's no issue here. I'm not scared to hurtle myself into space.
Mhm.
Um, Malala, right? Like it isn't as though she had no fear.
No. And she was
She was a
a
very young
young,
woman.
yeah.
Right, but channeling that energy of, "I'm afraid and I'm going to do it anyway. Um, I don't know all the outcomes here, right, but I'm going to trust myself and put myself out there and stand up for what I believe in." Do you think that for someone, it takes being grounded in a clear purpose to do that?
Absolutely. But I will also, I'll add to that. Yes, the clear purpose is key. But if you don't know that purpose yet,
Mhm,
there are definitely things about which you are passionate, things
mhm.
that you deeply believe in. And sometimes it can be those that get you on the path to being more courageous, more
Yeah,
outspoken, more bold, more brilliant in your thinking, and that then help you to get to the point of, oh, this is my purpose. You know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
started out as I was going to be a pediatrician. I
Mm,
ended up going through all of hospital medicine, all of that training, all of those years in the office, and went, no, I love the ER. And from the ER out into the leadership stuff and what I'm passionate about at this stage of the game. Yes, my work and yes, my advocacy. But I think my purpose on the other side is speaking with folks much like you, Megan, and showing others that it is possible, that
yeah.
you are possible. And I remember seeing that meme the first time, the word impossible changed into I am possible. And I
Mhm.
thought, this is brilliant. And I never thought of that in my 50 plus years on this earth. It is so simple, so beautiful, so
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah.
The other meme that I go back to is the one that says flawsome. Awesome in spite of my flaws and awesome because of my flaws. Because
Yeah.
if everyone was the same, it'd be such a boring, homogeneous world. And we wouldn't be able to take the lead. We wouldn't be able to stand out. We wouldn't be able to drive change. And we all know that there's change necessary across a whole lot of specters in our
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Um, I'm curious additional thoughts that you have on people pleasing and kind of the misplaced loyalty that you had mentioned. Where I see this come up in clinical medicine, right, is the physician who wants to leave where they're at and go and do something else, but just feels so fearful of leaving behind patients, of leaving behind colleagues. And you touched on that a little bit earlier in your story, but how did that show up for you?
Wow. It showed up as me going through. I was in my 60s when COVID started.
Mm,
And God love my director. He could be my child. He looked at me and said, Michelle, I love you, but. And I thought,
mm,
wow, is he going to tell me that my practice is falling off? And he says, no, no, no. I love you enough that I want you to stay safe. Do
mm,
something from home. If you want, go back and do the EHR stuff from home. Maybe do some utilization review or some such from home, but you should not be in this uncertainty.
mm,
I would feel badly if I exposed you to this and something bad happened.
mhm.
I sat back and I thought, this young whippersnapper's probably right. I remember when HIV was new. I
Yeah,
was there for Ebola and multi-drug resistant TB and a lot of
yeah,
the test things that we did when we were trying to figure out desperately what is the next thing. Um, the leaving was hard. I did
mhm,
believe I was leaving my team.
mhm,
And I'll tell you true, what it takes again is sitting back and saying, am I giving my best self to this position? Am I coming here with my full and all of everything that I'm capable of doing? Am I too drained to be at my best and
mm,
present and innovate and partner with my patients to let them know that I'm there for them and to be able to help them to get to the right decision for their lifestyle preference and their what they think is their best life.
mhm.
If I'm exhausted, if I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, if I'm feeling as though I'm not valued, there is no way that you
Yeah,
bring anything near your best to your practice. So, what I would say to those who are wondering and querying, if you do a plus minus list of your position and your pluses are fewer than your minuses,
mhm.
take a hard look at it and say, why are you putting yourself through that trial and tribulation every single day? And on top of that, if you have a family, if you have a significant other, if you have children, why are you putting them through that as well?
Yeah,
Because just as you don't bring your best self, the best version of yourself, and your presence to what you're doing at work, you're bringing that same person back home exhausted, less
yeah,
than, not
yeah,
necessarily enjoying and engaging in the stuff of life that makes us human,
yeah.
that
I
brings
think
us joy.
that's such a powerful message to people to really say, like, if you're in this place where you can't be bringing the self that you want, right, to your patients, to your coworkers, certainly back home to your family and your loved ones, then why are we continuing in this space? Especially if we've got something else that's calling to us, because I see that a lot as well, that there's something that's calling to us that feels scary, right? It
Yeah.
feels out there, and yet we feel this fear, but we're unhappy and we're not bringing our best self.
Yeah. We're uncertain. And
Yeah,
it's the uncertainty
yeah,
of maybe not having another paycheck or
yeah,
that it won't be the right job or
yeah.
that I'll
It's just
fail
more
at
of
it
the
because
same.
it's too far out of what I do,
Yeah,
you know? And that does take time.
yeah, yeah. This is so wonderful. So for someone who's listening to, all these elements of your story and they're finding themselves in pieces of it, what do you want someone to know who is in a moment of struggle? Thinking back to some of these parts in your own career, what do you want them to know that you wish you could have known at the time?
Wow. It's going to be okay. You're
Mm,
going to figure it out. That moving forward in spite of the fear is being brave,
hmm
and that living small doesn't do any service to you, the people around you, the people that you love and care about. And it doesn't do any service, and it doesn't honor the fact that you are here with this one precious life to live, and that you're living it small.
Yeah.
You're not maximizing the use of your talents and spreading your expertise and your fairy dust, as some people call it,
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah. And living small is not necessarily virtuous.
No, no. It's oh my gosh. It's
Despite
just
the messaging, to keep us quiet.
exactly, because I go back to that one as well. What
Yeah.
other decisions might you have made that would
hmm
have put you in what other places, in front of, beside, in the company of what other people, and what other decisions might they have made? All of that compounding effect is gone if you
Yeah.
stay small.
Yeah. Mm. I feel like we could continue these conversations for many hours. So I really appreciate you coming on today. For people who, are out there listening and they want to learn more about the work that you're doing, where can people find you?
Well, two places. First off is LinkedIn. I'm as let me think. It's Michelle Flemmings, MD, and I'm the only one at that looks like me. That's Michelle Flemmings, MD. And then the other is on YouTube. I have some videos talking about very similar things to this, and I want people to engage and go through the exercises and the processes, and I'm happy to go through it with them. And the channel on YouTube is at Dr. Michelle Flemmings. I speak about
Perfect.
this as well as leadership and things in, navigating the crazy politics in the workplace.
Yeah. And we'll have links to all those in the show notes so people can be sure to follow. Um, if she hasn't convinced you enough from just listening to her talk here, please go follow her. So many gems, so much wisdom. And I love that you are in this position now to also be, sharing these lessons and expanding female leadership, expanding leadership in really powerful ways, and trying to get that advocacy. Like, we as physicians need to show up. We as women leaders need to show up. I can't say we as people of color, but what we need to advance the voice of people of color. And I'm so glad that you're doing this work.
Thank you. We're fighting the good fight together. I am
Yeah.
happy to engage with any of the people listening, especially the women providers who are looking about, how do I become an effective voice at my organization? How do I help to advocate for our workforce here at our hospital on a larger stage? My network is expanding every day. I am happy to make the connections.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. You heard it here, guys. All right. So thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me. This has been an excellent conversation, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk.
Same here, Megan. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, my friends, that's what we have for you today. Until next time, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.